Hand idioms. British.com. Put your hands together.
If you are asked to put your hands together for somebody, you are asked to applaud them.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the Tweedy twins. Give a big hand.
When you give someone a big hand, you show your appreciation for them by enthusiastic applause. Let's give a big hand for the organizers.
Get your hands dirty. When you get your hands dirty, you get involved in the unpleasant or difficult aspects of something. I'll say that for our boss. He doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. Give someone a hand.
To give or lend someone a hand is to voluntarily assist them.
He was a lovely old man, always willing to give anyone a hand. Go hand in hand. When two things are intricately associated with each other, we say that they go hand in hand. Grammar and vocabulary go hand in hand when learning a new language. Take matters into your own hands. When you take matters or the law into your own hands, you decide to take action yourself rather than waiting for the authorities.
She took matters into her own hands and punctured the ball with a knife when it came in her garden. Offhand. If you say something without thinking about it beforehand, giving it no preparation, you say it offhand.
I can't, offhand, come up with any figures. In hand. To go cap in hand to someone is to beg them for help with something you need. If you think I'm going to go cap in hand and ask for my job back, you're very much mistaken. Set your hand to something. To set your hand to something is to begin doing it. I knew I eventually had to set my hand writing this book. Don't hand me that line. Don't hand me that line means that I do not believe what you're telling me. Don't hand me that line. If everyone else could get in on time, you should have been able to.
Hand me down. When something, typically clothing, is passed from an older sibling to a younger sibling, we call it a hand-me-down. Because I was the younger of the two, I always got my brother's hand-me-downs.
Third hand.
If you get some information third hand, you are getting it from someone who has no direct connection with what is behind the information. Too many journalists these days rely on third-hand information.
Reject out of hand. When you reject something out of hand, you reject it completely, and without consideration. Bob has such a bad reputation that they rejected him out of hand when he applied for the job. Fall into the hands of. If something falls into the hands of somebody else, then it comes under the control of the other. We don't want the weapons to fall into the hands of the enemy. Caught red-handed. When you are caught red-handed, you are caught in the act of committing a crime or doing something wrong. Having been caught red-handed, he could hardly deny involvement. Note, if you have just murdered someone, your hands will be covered in blood and you will thus be red-handed. Take your life in your hands. To take your life in your hands is to do something extremely dangerous. I'm not going to take my life in my hands and take up parachuting. That's for sure. The matter in hand.
When we talk about the matter in hand, we are talking about the thing that we are dealing with at that moment.
We can discuss that another day. Today we need to get on with the matter in hand. Sleight of hand. Being tricky or devious in your dealings with other people is to use sleight of hand. By some sleight of hand, he managed not to pay taxes for almost 40 years. Have someone eating out of your hand.
To have someone eating out of your hand is to dominate or manipulate someone into doing or thinking exactly what you want them to.
I don't know how he does it, but he always seems to have the press eating out of his hand. Note, also eating out of the palm of your hand. Hand in glove.
Hand in glove is to work very closely with someone else, often in an activity of dubious nature. I'm almost certain that some of the police officers were working hand in glove with the dealers.
Win hands down. When you win something easily, and without effort, you win hands down. The politician won the election hands down. All hands to the pumps. All hands to the pumps means that everybody needs to help. If we're going to get this order out by Friday, it's all hands to the pumps. An old hand.
Someone who is an old hand is very experienced at something because they've been doing it a long time.
Ask John. He's an old hand at accounts.
Can't see your hand in front of your face.
If it is very dark or foggy, you probably can't see your hand in front of your face.
I had to stop and pull over because the fog was so thick I couldn't see my hand in front of my face.
Time on your hands. To have time on your hands means they have plenty of free time to do what you want to do. If you want something doing quickly, give it to a busy man, and not to a man with time on his hands. Hands are tied.
When a man says his hands are tied, he means he can do nothing about a situation because he doesn't have the freedom to act.
I'd really love to reinstate you, but my hands are tied. Wandering hands. A man who often attempts to touch others, particularly women, for sexual gratification, is said to have wandering hands.
Most women avoided going into his office, because he had a reputation for having wandering hands.
Hand on heart. If you say something hand on heart, you're saying it with honesty and conviction.
I can say hand on heart that I've never looked at another woman since we'd been married.
Bite the hand that feeds you.
To treat someone who has always been generous and kind towards you with ingratitude is to bite the hand that feeds you. I looked after you for 16 years and then you refused to have anything to do with me.
Talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Know something like the back of your hand. When you know something like the back of your hand, you know it intimately. I've lived here since I was a boy. I know the place like the back of my hand.
My own fair hands.
If I make something with my own fair hands, I have made it carefully and lovingly myself.
I didn't want to buy a birthday cake, I thought I'd make one with my own fair hands.
Putty in your hands. If someone is putty in your hands, they are easy to manipulate and influence. Louise does everything her father told her. She is putty in his hands. Safe pair of hands.
A safe pair of hands is someone you can trust to do a job properly and without mishap. I've always regarded her as a safe pair of hands.
A backhanded compliment.
A backhanded compliment appears to be expressing approval but is actually negative. To tell me that my husband was very nice, and that no one was likely to try to steal him away from me, was something of a backhanded compliment.
Second hand. Anything which has been owned and used by someone else before you take ownership of it is called second hand. I never had a new bike as a kid, mine were all second hand. Get your hands on something. To get your hands on something is to physically get hold of it. I've always wanted to get my hands on one of the ones with the 2-liter engine. Change hands. When something changes hands, it passes into the possession of another person. Far from being a new car, it had changed hands dozens of times. Heavy-handed.
Heavy-handed people use too much force or power when dealing with problems and are insensitive to others' feelings. Don't be too heavy-handed.
This problem needs a light touch. Hand over fist.
Hand over fist is when you make or lose money very quickly and continuously.
When we started the business, we were making money hand over fist, but competition got in the way, and now we're losing money hand over fist. Force someone's hand. When you make someone do something or make a decision before they're ready, you force their hand.
He didn't want to resign, but the new information forced his hand.
Play the hand you're dealt. When you do the best you can with the resources at your disposal, you play the hand or cards you are dealt.
I didn't ask to be born with only one leg, but I played the hand I was dealt with and was successful.
Show your hand. When you show your hand, you reveal to someone what you intend to do.
Don't show your hand until you know what his position is.
Live from hand to mouth. If you only have enough money to survive on each month, and have no spare money, you are living from hand to mouth.
Most people on 0-hour contracts live from hand to mouth.
With your bare hands.
When you do something without using any tools, weapons, or any other aids, you do it with your bare hands.
He killed 3 of the enemy with his bare hands.
Hands off. Hands off
means do not touch or get involved with. You can look but you cannot touch. Remember, it's hands off. Leave something in someone's hands. To leave something in someone's hands is to trust someone else to do something. I should have never left the project in Jack's hands. The man's an idiot. Play into the hands of someone. When you play into the hands of someone, you give them an unfair advantage.
If the public get wind of this, it will play into the hands of the anti-capitalist lobby.
In the wrong hands. When something is in the wrong hands, it is in the hands of someone unsuitable. This information could be explosive in the wrong hands. Have the upper hand.
To have the upper hand is to have a useful advantage over another person.
We have to be very careful to make sure he doesn't get the upper hand in this deal. Show of hands. To give a show of hands is to vote on something. Should we hire her or not? Let's have a show of hands. A dab hand. If you're a dab hand at something, you do it extremely well.
I must say, my wife turned out to be a dab hand at painting.
At first hand. You experience something for yourself when you experience something first hand.
Surprisingly, as an Englishman in Spain, I have experienced racism first hand.